I, a man of 56 years, recently found out that my wife, Renee, aged 51, had undergone an STD test. She had kept this information from me for several months after returning from a lavish wedding. This discovery has led me to suspect infidelity. I apologize for assuming without concrete evidence or discussing it with her first. However, in any relationship, there may be things not immediately shared, which can be understandable. To provide context, we've been married for 13 years and have no children together. While I am her first husband, she is my second wife. In her early 20s, she was previously married and has a now 23-year-old daughter from that marriage. Her first marriage lasted only 5 years, marred by her ex-husband's abusive behavior, which led her to flee with her daughter. As we got married, I embraced her daughter as my own, providing her with support for her education and various needs. After completing her education, she pursued an executive career and has been residing in Manhattan ever since. I, on the other hand, had a living relationship with my college girlfriend until my mid-30s, which eventually ended, and she moved out 4 months ago. Renee attended her friend's wedding. Her friend was marrying an exceedingly wealthy businessman, someone who could be described as incredibly affluent, the type who owns a private yacht and indulges in luxurious winter vacations in the Bahamas, despite being in his 70s. Anyway, I'm not passing judgment on anyone here. I intentionally decided to skip the wedding. Renee was already overly fixated on her friend's extravagant wedding, and attending it with her would have meant enduring Renee's constant eye rolls as her friend flaunted her husband's wealth. So Renee attended the wedding, returned, and vented about how her friend was a gold digger who had found a rich man to marry. It was a predictable reaction. She ranted for a few days, and then we moved on. Now let's fast forward to the present. I developed a runny nose and flu-like symptoms, prompting me to consider consulting a doctor online. That's when I discovered that Renee had a membership for a fitness app that offered free physician consultations. I downloaded the app and attempted to log in using her email ID. She received a verification code, and although I don't recall her whereabouts at the time, she wasn't nearby to respond when I called out to her. I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter and retrieved the verification code from it. I proceeded to schedule an appointment with the physician, consulted with them, and then went to pick up the prescribed medication. Everything went smoothly. However, when I arrived at the pharmacy, the pharmacist inquired if the doctor had recommended any tests. I responded affirmatively but decided to start with the medication first. The pharmacist strongly recommended that I undergo the recommended tests as the flu was spreading rapidly in our neighborhood. Upon returning home, I booked the tests through the same application. While doing so, I stumbled upon the history of tests that had been previously scheduled through the application. There I discovered that Renee had undergone an STD test upon returning from her friend's wedding. The first thought that crossed my mind was, why would she do that? I recalled that after returning from the wedding, she had visited her daughter and stayed there for a week. At that time, I hadn't suspected anything, but now all these pieces are starting to fit together, reluctantly. I must admit that she must have done something inappropriate at her friend's wedding. Subsequently, she got tested, and then to avoid any sexual contact with me, went to stay with her daughter for a week. I reviewed the test report, and it showed negative results. This happened yesterday in the evening after dinner. Renee inquired if I had used her email ID to log into the app. I admitted that I had, explaining that I had taken the authentication code from her phone because she wasn't present. I had anticipated her reaction, but to my surprise, she didn't say anything at that moment. However, later on, she took actions that prompted me to log out of the app. I didn't notice this until the following morning, which is today when I arrived at the diagnostic center for the test. I attempted to access the appointment through the app only to discover that I had been logged out, and she had changed her login email as well. It was incredibly frustrating. Fortunately, the center had registered the appointment in their system, allowing me to proceed with the test. Upon returning home, I had intended to confront her thoroughly, but she wasn't at home. I called her to inquire about her whereabouts, but she didn't answer. Instead, she texted me, explaining that she was at her mother's and would be back late. I'm currently uncertain about how to channel my anger and frustration. I have strong suspicions that she cheated on me, but a part of me is still open to listening to her and wants to believe that I might be mistaken. Update 1. Hello everyone, I want to express my gratitude for connecting with me. Speaking to all of you during those anxious hours truly helped me find some peace, believe me. Now, let me pick up where I left off. Renee didn't return home that night. Instead, she spent the night at her mother's place. Naturally, I grew restless, unable to sleep, and my mind was filled with various unsettling possibilities. The following morning when she came back, I couldn't contain myself any longer. I questioned her about why she had been avoiding me and why she had revoked my access to the application. She acted as though she had no idea what I was talking about. In frustration, I confronted her, asserting that I knew she had taken an STD test after attending her friend's wedding, and I understood the implications. She vehemently denied my accusations, claiming that the test was merely a routine checkup. Although I lacked concrete evidence beyond that report, my intuition strongly suggested that she had been unfaithful. I spoke from my gut feeling, insisting that I knew what she was concealing. Our arguments intensified, with her portraying herself as the victim of false accusations, while I pressed her for a confession. Matters escalated to the point where I threatened to inform her mother and daughter about the tests. I also mentioned that I would contact her friend and reveal that she had slept with her husband. In hindsight, it may have been a rash move, but the situation had become so tumultuous that I had lost my composure. After several rounds of heated arguments, emotional manipulation, and emotional breakdowns, she finally confessed 2 days later. Those 2 days were absolute nightmares for me. She admitted to having hooked up with a dancer at her friend's bachelorette party. She recited the classic line that cheaters often use when caught: "It didn't mean anything, and there were no emotional attachments involved." Certainly. But I do feel hurt when she engages with others intimately, even if it's just for fun. I left home and headed to my office, where I run a small consultancy business. It was a quiet Sunday, and the office was deserted, offering me a peaceful space to collect my thoughts. She reached out, apologizing through calls and texts, but it held no significance for me. I ended up living in the office for a week, looking visibly distressed. Everyone noticed my absence at home, my repeated outfit choices, and the few gym t-shirts stacked in my car trunk. Eventually, I returned home, finding Renee there, inquiring about my next steps. She urged us to move forward and promised not to repeat her actions. I expressed that our relationship could never return to its previous state. I wasn't in the right frame of mind to make decisions and needed time to think, perhaps even to move on. I requested solitude during this period and suggested she consider living with her mother or daughter. However, Renee was reluctant to leave. She pleaded for one last chance to mend our marriage, willing to do anything except move out. She proposed spending time together, going on dates, and taking vacations to mend the fractures in our relationship. Spending time with her was the last thing I desired after learning the truth. After careful consideration, I couldn't reconcile with my conscience and opted to relocate my belongings to the guest bedroom, maintaining minimal communication with her. After a few days, she came to inquire about my decision, and I informed her that I was not willing to reconcile with her. She persisted in suggesting we give it another try, but I remained firm in my refusal. I explained that even sharing the same household was becoming untenable for me, and if she didn't leave, I would be the one to move out. She remained resolute about staying in the house and attempting to salvage our marriage. Feeling I had conveyed my stance clearly, I proceeded to pack my belongings and departed. I found temporary lodging in a motel and began searching for affordable rental options. A distant friend of mine had recently put his house up for a short-term lease, so I opted for that and settled into his one-bedroom condo. Since then, I've been living independently. Additionally, someone suggested on my previous post that I should undergo testing due to concerns about potential infection from my wife. I followed that advice, and fortunately, the test results came back negative. Renee initially reached out to me, but I eventually blocked her and requested that she refrain from contacting me. She informed her daughter that I had abandoned her for a trivial reason. She made efforts to mediate our situation initially. I avoided divulging the reason, but over time, I sensed that she was becoming resentful towards me. Renee had been feeding her falsehoods, so I decided to be honest with her. She's an adult and capable of understanding the situation. She assured me that she wouldn't pressure me into reconciling with her mother and that she would continue to love me regardless of my decision. She felt angry with Renee for risking our previously stable marriage for a moment of enjoyment. I assured her that I would never force her to choose between Renee and me. My love for her remained unchanged, and she was still my daughter regardless of the altered dynamics between Renee and me. She stays in contact with me and regularly checks up on me, but we intentionally avoid discussing Renee. I suppose that's how I'm progressing with my life. Update 2. Last month, I received a call from Renee's friend Lily, a 49-year-old female. She's the same friend whose wedding Renee disrupted, causing trouble in our marriage. She delivered quite unexpected news. Renee had been making advances toward her wealthy husband. Yes, it left me quite surprised. Renee connected with him on social media, flirted with him, and even sent him explicit photos. I'm not passing judgment on the man, but he reciprocated her advances, and they even embarked on a vacation together in an island country. This continued for over 3 to 4 months, but Lily only recently discovered it. I also informed her about our separation, as she was unaware of it. Lily felt let down because she wanted to team up with me to seek revenge on Renee. I inquired about her husband's involvement, as he was equally culpable. She explained that leaving her husband wouldn't be easy for her. At present, she was focused on pursuing Renee and sought my assistance. I agreed to help her with anything she needed, except actively chasing after Renee for investigations. I didn't want to reopen old wounds that had taken months to heal. She understood and appreciated my stance, assuring me that she'd reach out if she required assistance. What transpired next was this: Renee went on a date with Lily's husband, but Lily was tracking her husband's phone and caught them in a compromising situation in a hotel room. Renee had the audacity to engage in a physical altercation with Lily, hurling insults like gold digger and the like. However, Lily persisted and filed a case of assault against Renee. Her husband also supported her, as refusing to do so would have led to a costly divorce. Renee found herself isolated. The hotel staff provided statements against Renee, as Lily had the financial means to influence them, while Renee had none. According to Lily, Renee initiated the confrontation, but Lily delivered a powerful punch that left Renee with bruises. The hotel authorities contacted the police, resulting in Renee being released with a minor fine and a warning to stay away from them. Somehow, Renee managed to sneak into their garage and vandalized Lily's car, leaving everyone perplexed about her actions. She displayed such recklessness that she didn't even bother to check for surveillance cameras before entering the campus. Her actions were captured on camera, and Lily had her charged with trespassing and property damage. I learned about this second incident from Renee when she called me seeking assistance. Initially, I contemplated hanging up on her, but she pleaded that she had no one else to turn to, and I was her only hope. I decided to bail her out, and she promised to reimburse me for the fine. She also requested that I keep this situation confidential from her daughter, and I agreed. Curious about her intentions, I asked her what she was trying to achieve. She claimed she was securing her future, as she believed I had abandoned her. But securing her future by pursuing a friend's husband? She affirmed it, stating she saw no other option. She pointed out that Lily had done the same by chasing a wealthy man and causing his divorce from his wife of 20 years. Renee intended to do the same to Lily. Listening to all this left me feeling disgusted. I returned home and informed Lily about Renee's plan. It made me feel like a gossipy schoolgirl, but Renee was in the wrong for chasing someone else's husband, and I felt compelled to act. I didn't derive any pleasure from it, but the rivalry between these two friends over luring an older wealthy man to secure their futures struck me as rather absurd. I couldn't help but congratulate the ex-wife of this affluent man for being free of this rat race. A couple of days ago, Renee reached out to me expressing her desire for a divorce. It's not that I hadn't been contemplating divorce, but I had intentionally been postponing it for 2 reasons. Firstly, I have no intention of marrying again, so the current lack of official divorce doesn't affect me. Secondly, if we were to divorce, Renee would have made substantial demands. I own a business, and aside from the house where Renee resides, there's also an ancestral property that would be divided between my sister and me right after our separation. I consulted my attorney about this, and he advised me to update my will, excluding Renee as a beneficiary of my assets. So even if we don't proceed with the divorce and something were to happen to me, Renee wouldn't receive any inheritance. Renee had a lengthy list of divorce conditions, including the house, 1 year of financial support, and substantial alimony. She claimed she sought a divorce to facilitate her marriage to Lily's husband without complications. Supposedly, he promised to divorce Lily contingent upon Renee divorcing me first. I informed her that I would discuss this matter with my lawyer and revert. The discussion is ongoing, and I will provide an update once it's resolved. Update 3: the divorce is now finalized, and Renee receives nothing in the settlement. Lily and her husband played a significant role in this outcome. After Renee requested a divorce and outlined her terms, I consulted with my attorney and shared Renee's intentions. My lawyer advised a strategic approach, guiding me throughout the process. He recommended that I inform Lily about Renee's plan and simultaneously delay the divorce proceedings as much as possible. I followed his advice accordingly. Whenever Renee inquired about the divorce, I employed various excuses to postpone it, citing my busy schedule and other reasons. When her patience wore thin, I indicated my readiness to sign the papers but without providing any compensation. I presented her with revised terms allowing her to keep the car and permitting her to reside in the house, which was mine, for an additional 6 months. Naturally, she was dissatisfied with these terms and insisted on financial compensation. Under the pretext of discussing the matter with my lawyer, I continued to delay. Eventually, she reluctantly accepted my terms and signed the divorce papers. However, there's more to the story. In reality, Lily had significant control over her husband, influencing him to comply with her wishes to preserve their marriage. They both devised a plan to undermine Renee. Although her husband was equally involved in the affair with Renee, Lily placed the blame solely on Renee and vowed to ruin her while forgiving her husband. As part of their scheme, Lily's husband assured Renee that he would divorce Lily and marry her, pressuring her to initiate the divorce proceedings first. We all shared the same objective, ensuring that Renee wouldn't receive any funds from the divorce. I aimed to protect my finances while Lily aimed to exact revenge on Renee. Her husband complied with Lily's wishes to salvage their marriage. Renee's naivety led her to fall into their trap. She ultimately agreed to my conditions and signed the divorce papers, paving the way for her to marry Lily's husband. Once this matter was resolved, it was time for Lily's husband to divorce her and marry Renee. However, this is when the truth came to light. Renee had been communicating with Lily's husband, thinking it was him. But then she received a call from him, and it turned out to be Lily on the line. Renee was bewildered upon discovering the truth. Having lost everything, she came to me in a state of defeat, accusing me of being complicit in the plot to take revenge on her. I admitted to it, as it safeguarded my hard-earned money. She attempted emotional manipulation, questioning how I could betray her when she believed I was the only one who would support her. It seemed ironic because she had been the one to engage in secretive affairs and pursue her friend's husband to secure her future. Now, amidst it all, I was portrayed as the antagonist for protecting my own interests. I assured her that I had done nothing wrong in safeguarding my finances. I have fairly compensated her. In fact, more than she deserved. Technically, she shouldn't have received any payment since she cheated on me. Nevertheless, she was driving a car I purchased and residing in my house for over a year, even after our separation. She threatened to inform her daughter about how I supposedly betrayed her and left her destitute. I responded, certainly, I can provide her with all the details of how her mother used her assets to secure her future. Before concluding the conversation, she made a threat to sue me for alleged manipulation and obtaining divorce terms through forgery. I'm confident such charges hold no merit, especially now that the divorce is settled. There's little she can do. This all occurred just a week ago, and I now feel more liberated than ever. The divorce is finalized, and in a few months, I will regain possession of my house from Renee. I harbor no desire for revenge against her, and I still don't believe I sought vengeance. I merely safeguarded my finances, and there's nothing wrong with that, regardless of what others may think. I remain unconcerned. I'm eagerly anticipating a peaceful life and have no intentions of entering into any serious relationships ever again. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive in. Second story. I'm a 43-year-old man who has been living in Chicago for the past 2 years because of my work obligations. My wife, Jill, who is 39 years old, and our 9-year-old son are still in our hometown of Houston. Before the pandemic hit, I used to co-manage a garage with a friend, while Jill held an executive position. While our income wasn't large, it was enough for us to live comfortably in our own house, which was inherited from my family. My parents had retired early and moved to our countryside farm to enjoy a peaceful life surrounded by nature. Every 2 weeks, my father would load up his truck with dairy products, fruits, vegetables, and seasonal crops like potatoes, all grown on our farm, and send them to us. This arrangement allowed us to save a significant amount of money. Life was going well until the sudden impact of COVID-19. We lost everything as the pandemic forced everyone to stay indoors, emptied the streets of cars, and led people to sell their vehicles due to mortgage difficulties. Unfortunately, our garage suffered a similar fate, and we had to close it down and terminate the lease because of challenges with rental payments. Jill's company also shut down, resulting in her losing her job. Our only source of hope was the grains, vegetables, and milk supplied by my parents' farm. Though we had some savings, they were depleting faster than we had expected. Fortunately, government and local community support in the form of sponsored groceries and essential supplies came to our rescue, helping families like ours to cope with these challenging times. When restrictions began to ease, I considered finding a job because reopening the garage under those circumstances seemed impossible. Unfortunately, most garages had permanently closed due to owners struggling with mortgage payments. The few that remained open were not hiring new employees, and the owners were running the business themselves. Jill faced the same situation and couldn't return to her job. After extensive searching and reaching out to various contacts, one of my distant cousins informed me about a job opportunity in Chicago. It was a position at a car manufacturing facility with a good salary, and I had no other choice but to accept it. Our savings were nearly depleted, and the prospects of finding work in Houston were grim. I left for the job, leaving my wife and son behind. The company provided me with food and lodging, and I had 15 days of leave every 6 months to visit my family. The first year went smoothly despite the distance. Jill and I remained close. She constantly encouraged me to work harder so we could reunite in Chicago. I resided in a company-provided dormitory, and although the factory was located in the suburbs, it was still costly to bring my family there. We understood it was a long journey, but we held on to hope that we would soon be living together. After long hours at work, talking to Jill was the only thing that rejuvenated and motivated me. Changes began to occur following my last trip back home about 6 or 7 months ago. During that time, Jill landed a job at a startup company. Initially, I didn't notice any significant alterations, except that she wasn't available for me every day. This was understandable since she used to be a homemaker and could always make time for me when I called. With her job, it was unrealistic to expect the same level of availability. However, I did observe some changes in her behavior during my last vacation back home. She became more guarded about herself and her phone. She didn't speak as openly as before, and it felt like she was being cautious about her words, which was different from her previous demeanor. Prior to that, when she had just started her job, she had a challenging time dealing with her boss. She worked as a secretary in a CEO's office at a startup, and the young, recently graduated founders were quite rude to their employees. Jill found it difficult to handle their harshness and eventually resigned after a few months. Following her resignation and a lengthy email outlining the toxic workplace, her CEO contacted her, promising to improve his behavior. Many employees were leaving the company due to his bad attitude. Her income was crucial for us, and despite me covering all the household expenses, she managed to save most of her earnings. This helped expedite our plan to live together, leading her to withdraw her resignation and return to her job. Her situation improved, and she informed me that her boss had become much more polite and respectful, so things seemed to have settled. Now, fast forward to 3 months ago. Jill told me that her boss, who is the CEO, was going to a 5-day investor summit in Dublin and wanted her to accompany him. Initially, she declined because she couldn't leave our son alone for that long. However, her boss offered to cover the expenses for our son to join them. I must admit I have little insight into how these corporate companies operate, especially when it comes to spending on seemingly unnecessary trips like this. Nonetheless, I left the decision to Jill. She believed it was essential for her career, so she decided to go. I might come across as possessive, but I did feel uneasy about her trip, though I kept my concerns to myself. She stayed in regular contact with me, providing updates throughout the trip. We FaceTimed with our son daily, even during the trip, and he was thrilled about visiting a new place since it was his first time leaving Houston. Gradually, I relaxed. After the trip, I noticed no apparent changes in Jill's behavior, nothing that matched the confessions I've read here, like her ignoring me or becoming distant, etc. I wouldn't be sharing this if I hadn't gone home last month. I deliberately kept the exact date of my visit a secret. I wanted to surprise her. I had done this before on previous occasions, but this time her reaction was more shocked than joyful. When she saw me at the door, her face didn't light up upon seeing me, instead, it appeared serious. Despite her attempts to feign excitement, you can still discern these subtle changes in your partner. She became very guarded, not only about her phone but also about herself in general. When you reunite with your partner after 6 months, it's only natural to desire intimacy. In the past, she used to eagerly embrace me on the very night of my arrival, but this time she seemed hesitant. I asked her what was wrong, and she replied with nothing. Her demeanor resembled that of a shy, inexperienced schoolgirl who was merely going along with the motions, being cautious about herself and showing no initiative. I couldn't help but feel that she was hiding something, fearing that I might discover it. I confronted her, but she refused to acknowledge anything unusual. However, over the next few days, she returned to her usual self. I'm not proud to admit it, but that very night after she fell asleep, I snooped into her phone. To my surprise, I found nothing suspicious. Her conversations with her boss consisted solely of work-related matters, with no questionable phone calls or incriminating content in her gallery. When she was away at work, I questioned my son about the details of the Dublin trip, but he didn't reveal anything out of the ordinary either. I returned to work after the holidays feeling content and relieved. 1 week ago, Jill informed me that she was going on a 2-day work trip to Florida with her boss, and this time, our son wouldn't be accompanying them due to his upcoming exams. He'll be staying with my in-laws during those 2 days. I'm not sure if I'm overreacting, but I can't shake this uneasy feeling about the situation. I inquired about who would be joining them, and she mentioned it would be just her and her boss. What strikes me as odd is that her company has 2 founders, yet she consistently travels with only one of them. I'm not sure if I'm being overly suspicious, but I want to address these concerns early on rather than ignoring potential warning signs and regretting it later. Has anyone else experienced a similar situation? I would greatly appreciate any advice or tips. Update 1. Hello everyone, it's been a considerable amount of time since my previous post. During this hiatus, I connected with several men who, like me, were deployed away from their hometowns and faced similar situations. Many of them, upon hearing about my circumstances, advised me to give Jill the benefit of the doubt, especially since I couldn't find any concrete evidence of her infidelity. Taking their advice, I chose to do just that. Following her trips to Dublin and Florida, she embarked on numerous work journeys to cities such as Amsterdam and Seattle, interestingly never visiting Chicago where I reside. A month ago, I received my long-awaited second promotion, which came with a substantial salary increase. I was elated when the news was announced, and I immediately called Jill to share my joy. However, her reaction was far from enthusiastic. The reason behind her lack of excitement was clear: my promotion meant that she and our son could finally move in with me. I asked her if she wasn't pleased about my hard-earned promotion. I had dedicated 4 years to this job, often working double shifts with the sole aim of earning this promotion so that I could reunite with my family. She expressed happiness about the promotion itself but hesitated about relocating to a new place. She explained that she had put in a lot of effort to rebuild her career, and she didn't want to start over again. I suggested she could find a new job in Chicago, but she wasn't keen on that idea. She mentioned she anticipated a promotion and had put in a tremendous amount of effort to establish herself in the company. Now she was determined not to leave without securing that promotion. I found it hard to accept because she seemed to be resisting the idea personally. If given the chance, I would have gladly left my job to be with my family. Despite her significantly lower salary compared to mine, she could have easily found a similarly paying job here, yet she wasn't willing to make the move. This disagreement led to numerous fights and arguments between us. Initially, she cited our son's school and curriculum as reasons for not relocating. Our son is passionate about soccer and has been receiving training at a local club. I assured her that I could find him a good training club here, but she was hesitant, stating that moving would disrupt our son's life entirely. While some of her points were valid, I couldn't shake the feeling that she simply didn't want to share a home with me. Ultimately, we reached an agreement to wait another year, save more money, and then reconsider this decision. About 2 to 3 months later, Jill surprised me by expressing her desire to move to Chicago with me. I asked her what had changed so suddenly. She explained that she had a change of heart and felt that our son needed me. Just a few months prior, during our arguments, she had argued against disrupting our son's curriculum. During that period, our son's academic year had just concluded, making it convenient for us to enroll him in a new school in Chicago. However, now that the new academic session has commenced, it would be quite challenging to secure mid-year admission for him. I suggested that we wait for this year and consider moving next year, but she remained insistent on living together. When I inquired about her job, she expressed her willingness to resign, emphasizing that family holds greater importance than anything else. I'm truly unsure about the driving force behind this sudden change in her, and I do have my suspicions about something being amiss. She has even reached the point where she's prepared to postpone our son's academic session by a year. I've discussed this with some of my local colleagues here, and they have assured me of their assistance in facilitating our son's mid-session admission. I'm making preparations for everything else to have them join me here, including arranging housing, a vehicle, and school enrollment. However, deep down, I can't shake the feeling that she has motivations beyond just wanting to be with me. Update 2. It turns out that my wife was indeed having an affair, and I discovered the truth when she moved with me to Chicago. As I mentioned in my previous update, she suddenly expressed her desire to relocate with me and was willing to quit her job. I felt a mix of happiness and suspicion about the entire situation, but I made all the necessary arrangements for them. My cousin, who had referred me to this job, helped me secure my son's admission in the same academic year and find an affordable rental apartment. So, Jill and my son moved in with me, and I couldn't have been happier. All the suspicions and doubts I had initially vanished once we started living together. It was a joyful time. However, as time passed, I began to notice that Jill had changed from the woman I had married. While it's natural for people to change over time, this was not a positive transformation. She became irritable and guarded. Whenever I approached her about it, she would attribute it to missing our hometown friends and family back there. I could empathize with her since I had also been away from family for an extended period. But one night, I stumbled upon her in tears during a phone call. I inadvertently overheard her conversation and realized she was pleading with someone to take her back. Instead of concealing or investigating further, I decided to confront her after her call ended. I had heard everything clearly, and she didn't deny or manipulate the situation. She confessed to everything. It turned out that her young boss had an intimate relationship with her, quite explicitly. It all began during their first trip to Dublin after a successful investment deal. They celebrated so joyously and consumed enough alcohol to lose control and engage in such acts. Following that, they continued their involvement every night after our son had gone to sleep. This revelation left me so repulsed that I had the urge to confront her about it right then and there. Their physical relationship persisted beyond the initial trip and on subsequent business trips. It seemed more like a rendezvous than a work assignment. This was the reason she was hesitant to leave her job. However, when she informed her boss, I wanted her to be with me, but she declined because of him. He became apprehensive and assured her that he wasn't serious about their physical involvement. He encouraged her to prioritize her family over him. This revelation greatly upset her. Although she knew it was a casual affair, a part of her felt hurt that he wasn't as emotionally invested as she was. He even introduced her to the woman he was casually dating. Essentially, Jill was merely an object of physical desire for him. Isn't this evident? Needless to say, he had no intention of marrying her or entering into a serious commitment. I can't comprehend what she was thinking when she traded her marriage for such a cheap physical relationship. When the CEO didn't reciprocate Jill's feelings, she took it as a blow to her ego and decided to resign from her job. This time, he didn't bother to inquire about the reason and accepted her resignation. It appeared that he was eager to rid himself of her, and her resignation made things easier for him. She had assumed he would beg and plead for her to stay. Why would he? As the owner of the company, he had numerous women available to him, so there was no reason for him to pursue her. Jill was simply an easily accessible source of amusement for him, and he took advantage of the situation. She made a mistake by taking him seriously. Now she's calling and pleading with him to take her back, but he's urging her to move on. It's astonishing to learn that she was willing to become his mistress, as she revealed during their conversation. I asked her how she managed to carry on this affair for so long. She explained that their interactions occurred in person, and they shared the same workspace for 8 to 10 hours a day. This clarified why I couldn't find any evidence on her phone. They didn't exchange texts or calls during my 15-day home visits because they were physically together for a significant portion of the day. Her boss wasn't emotionally invested in her, so there was no need for them to communicate further. He sought physical involvement, and she willingly provided it within the confines of his office. Yes, she admitted this to me. They engaged in regular intimate encounters in his office, ensuring the doors were locked and the office camera was turned off. This revelation weighed heavily on my mind. I asked her to leave me alone, and by the time our confrontation ended, it was already morning. I slept throughout the day. When I woke up in the evening, I noticed that she had prepared my favorite meal. She acted as if everything was normal and suggested we start fresh. However, I firmly declined, expressing that I had been working tirelessly day and night to secure a better life for my family while she was involved with her CEO. She feigned surprise when I mentioned the word divorce. She exclaimed, "How could you do this to me? I sacrificed everything for you, stood by you during our tough times when you had nothing, and now that you're earning well, you want to abandon me." It's true that she supported me during difficult times, but she also faltered and engaged in infidelity. I too fulfilled my role as a good husband. Long distance was challenging for me as well, and I longed for a family and a fulfilling intimate life, but I didn't resort to infidelity like her. Despite her apologies and numerous promises, I remained resolute in my decision. I informed her that I would be booking her return tickets and sending the divorce papers shortly. Thankfully, I had a prenuptial agreement in place, which will greatly benefit me financially. I'll provide more details in the next update. At the moment, my state of mind is far from stable. I've left our home and have been residing in the company's dormitory. I'll provide a final update once I've sorted out this chaotic situation. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I want to express my gratitude for all the support. Some people have mentioned that I might have missed some red flags and that wives tend to cheat in long-distance relationships. I want to clarify that I was vigilant right from the beginning. I noticed even the slightest change in her behavior and openly discussed it. I made daily calls to her and had transparent conversations regularly. I even checked her phone during my visits home. I'm not sure what more I could have done to prevent the infidelity. So, yes, the divorce proceedings have now commenced. I've arranged for their return tickets home. My son is still very young and unable to live without his mother. Considering my work situation, it's not feasible for me to care for him alone. Moreover, he has been away from me for so many years, and it wouldn't be in his best interest to keep him with me at this time. I'm hopeful that as he matures and understands the situation, he will come to understand my decision. Jill pleaded with me, explaining that she had lost everything and lacked the means to support herself. I offered to let her stay in the house until I returned to our hometown. Fortunately, we had a prenuptial agreement that prevents her from making any claims on my property in the event of a divorce due to cheating, so she won't have access to my house. I have agreed to provide child support for our son, ensuring that she receives nothing from the divorce. Even after she left for Houston, she continued to contact me, requesting one last chance to repair our relationship. She remained hopeful that I would forgive her for the sake of our son. Yes, it's true that some people choose to forgive their unfaithful partner for the sake of their children. Label me as selfish if you wish, but I refuse to feign happiness in our marriage just to spare our son from discomfort. Despite a difficult journey, the divorce was finalized, leaving her with nothing. Her job loss and negative references from her former employer, citing her habit of abrupt resignations, have made it challenging for her to find new employment. Moreover, the corporate sector has been grappling with tough market conditions. Occasionally, she leaves voicemails blaming me for her misfortunes, but I choose not to dwell on them. I haven't blocked her to ensure she knows her messages are heard, yet I remain unmoved by her struggles. It's crucial for me to convey that my feelings for her have vanished completely.